Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the seminar. We are going to present the AM4INFRA project. My name is Fabio Pasquali. I work for the National Road Agency of Italy, which is called ANAS. And here is the agenda. I will be the moderator of this meeting. And during the meeting, we will present the project by describing the different components. And then we will spend some time in the future of the project and the dissemination activities. And we, of course, welcome any comment, any question, any feedback from our presentation. But first of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Marolda from the European Commission, who is going to give us a precious introduction to the project and is going to describe the background and the reason why the Commission is supporting this project. As we all know, AM4INFRA is fully financed by the Commission in the framework of Horizon 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well, I can say congratulations. So we have arrived almost at the end of the project here, so really keen to see how it will continue. You know, the Commission is no longer following the project, so I'm very sorry that I cannot get into the details of your work. We have more, let's say, a political overview of what is going on, and these are our colleagues in the agency that are on the daily contact with you. But let me give you a little bit of background, why this project exists. Quite a long time ago, the Commission urged a little bit of the platforms to create a cross-modal task force on infrastructure, because we considered that the component of infrastructure in all the different technical platforms was a little bit weak in comparison to the vehicle stakeholders. It was done. And I remember that in Ruth Smith, that unfortunately today cannot be here, was the chair of this cross-modal task force. I have been told that the first 6 months have been quite heavy, because to put people from the different modes to talk together is not obvious, but at the end they managed to have a common roadmap for innovation. And I see that that has been also a little bit the seed of collaboration, because slowly, we see that different modal infrastructure are present together in some of our proposals, in some of our activities. But the main things that came out of this roadmap for infrastructure, for cross-modal infrastructure, was a quite important element. Is that technology is important, but technology is there. So research on developing technologies is not the priority. Let's use the technology that is here, but in order to be able to apply the technology and to make that really becoming innovation in our field, we needed to change the governance. And I think that we tried to take up these recommendations in the Commission, and the way the calls were presented were also focusing exactly on this aspect. It is not only a technological development, we need a system innovation in this field. And I think that, well, exactly, AM4INFRA replied to this call, and you are approaching that, I mean, in the wished way of the Commission, because that is intermodal, that is focusing on the various aspects and stages of the governance of the infrastructure, from, if I'm not mistaken, is really from the planning, the construction, until dismantling. I don't know if you included that as well, but let's say hard maintenance at least. And so I think that is really exactly what we were expecting, and we are really keen to see and to receive your recommendations. Another very important aspect is that another goal of the Commission is to create synergies between programs. And the fact that this project is a beneficiary of H2020 funding, but is also using the 10T network for the living labs. And so there is potentially applying and eligible for further CEF funding. And there is a strong support from CEDAR, and the possible financing from CEDAR is really more or less closing the triangle of synergies that we really would like to see more on a daily basis as a reality. I am coming here from another session downstairs that was infrastructure as a service. And just a little anecdote before leaving the other room, I don't take much time. The people on the stage were almost all road representatives, road infrastructure representatives. And somebody from the audience was complaining and saying, why is always road? You don't include the other modes. Huh? And my reply was, I'm sorry, that is not that we do not try. We try hard. We invite every mode in every possible opportunity. If they do not reply, we cannot force them. So I think please stimulate all as much as you can the representative of other mode infrastructures to collaborate, to participate, show them how much in common all the modes have when we talk about infrastructure. Of course, rail is not interested in asphalt technology development. And you are maybe not so much interested in welding systems. But I mean the methodology, the way to approach the governance in order to have an innovative infrastructure is common to everybody. So it's really, I will leave this job in 1 week time. And I hope that my legacy will be this one. Please try to create a full intermodal infrastructure community. And if you wanted to give a name to this baby, call it Christina. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for the very interesting and nice presentation. You are going to leave your assignment in a week, you said?
Yes.
Well. Thank you. It was very interesting. Well, how is this structured? First of all, Ramesh Sinyal will describe us the project, and then we will get into the detail of the three work packages. So please, Ramesh. Okay. Unfortunately, Ruth Smith could not attend for personal reasons, and that's why you find this name here. Ramesh?
Okay.
Close to the microphone.
Yeah, close. Actually, Ruth's not here, but I'm in disguise, by the way. So, good morning, everyone, and hopefully you can hear with this mic. So, in terms of the asset management, AM4INFRA, it's, we phrase this asset management for infrastructure. So, the infrastructure is all about the overall sort of infrastructure, whether it be road, rail, waterways, or even airways, in terms of airport as a mode of transport. So we are talking in a sort of broader sense. So this project was initiated in September 2017, and we're nearly there in terms of completing the journey as to where we were and where we are ending in terms of the conclusion and the legacy and the way forward as such. It's unique in many ways, in the sense it's not research. Actually, it's Pathfinder and saying how can we harness the tons of research we've done in relation to asset management, road management, rail management, and there's lots and lots of knowledge which exists across sort of the transport modes, but we need to make better use of that in overall sense. So I think that's the sort of the emphasis. So the key message coming out of this work is common language, common models in terms of the way we see how infrastructure works, and having sort of the common data and information which we can exchange and make better use of as such. We need to learn from each other as such. So when it comes to sort of the partners, we had 5 infrastructure agencies uniquely formed the partnership at the onset in terms of the delivery of this H2020 EC project. It was a good opportunity making that sort of use of it and getting sort of operators and harnessing this knowledge collectively. So in essence, we're going to hear a lot more later on in terms of the work we've done, but there are 3 work packages. So the first one is all about sort of the line of sight, principally on asset management. And it's not just asset management in terms of what we're looking at, it's leadership. Leadership in how we deliver our sort of infrastructure in a safe and serviceable way, but ensuring the citizens, people who use the infrastructure, are at the heart of what we actually deliver. We mustn't forget they're the ones who are important, and the way we manage cannot be dealt sort of in a way which is very inward looking, but we need to explain how we manage and how we develop certain things. So that's the first thing we sort of have as a work package, policy goals to field operations. And there are many players in that sort of arena, but to actually translate that into a language which works for all stakeholders and everyone are in it together as a big team. The second package is something which we felt was very important, and that is all understanding sort of the whole life cost aspects. It's no different to our sort of bodies and our health, and understanding as we age, we need more attention and more treatment perhaps in a light-hearted way. But assets are no different. They suffer through its use in terms of vehicles on the road network, real use in terms of number of trains that might be using that network, waterways, and airports as well, similarly. So that's the task we had as work package 2. And the associated with this is how do we adopt risk-based management as such. And the final package, work package 3, is the data and information. We have lots and lots of data, but how do we bring that together? How do we define the sort of the definitions, and how do we culminate that into something that works best for us in ensuring it's easy to use and there is a structured framework? So that's the third package. Following this, we had a series of living laboratories. There were 3 laboratories. Principally, they're sort of exchange of knowledge and understanding of how we operate different infrastructure and how can we make best use of it. But once more, the emphasis is on putting our citizens at the heart of this sort of environment and ensuring what they need is delivered sensibly. But also remember the stakeholders, people who fund the government, the treasuries, and such. So everyone needs to work together. But this is sort of point in principle, the living laboratories. So one, we had living laboratory in Rome. So Elisabetta will give a further explanation of what that means, but it's all about, sorry, my slide is slightly skewed, but the first, that was the first laboratory. But certainly this slide you see is all about the Eindhoven the living laboratory, which was all about cross-border fundamentally in terms of 2 road operating bodies. So we had Export South Netherlands and we had the Flanders as such, but understanding the cross-border issues and challenges and ensuring it works in many ways in a more compatible way. So we had principal partners there, the national bodies, the provinces, and the municipalities. The second one is actually the one we had in London, and that's what we call the motorway AM4/M25 corridor. A little bit more detail later on when I explain about that work package too. But it's all about risk-based approach for life cost management and sort of addressing the key needs of that local area as such. Uniquely, we had CEDAM exec board attending this workshop. We had some work for them to do as well, so which was good, and actually putting something into practice with their help. And finally, as I mentioned, the Living Lab in Rome. It's on the Ring Road A90, but there are other operators in terms of bodies and municipality, i.e. the metropolitan body and the public sort of public sort of maintained roads and privately financed roads as well. That's the 3 laboratories. I think the results have been good in the sense we achieved to an extent within the limitation of the time we've had. But as you heard earlier, there was much more, well, there has been more emphasis on roads in many ways, because commonly we seem to have great sort of interest in this area, but we had sort of the rail operators, within these 3 laboratories, partially, waterways, partially, and we need to work better in terms of the future issues such as flood defenses. This is all about evolving and learning by doing certain things. So we had sort of specific institutions, attending, but how do we set the organization requirements? That's the kind of thing we need to address. But making better use of living laboratories is not something which actually we have done and saying it's a task and finished, but it's something that will continue. And we build the momentum and ensuring that actually there's better knowledge gained, but addressing fundamentally in some local localities, say, or corridors. We've got certain degree of memorandum of understanding within sort of the rail bodies in Europe between CEDA and EIM, and there are rolling activities within AM4INFRA, but we think there are other projects where we need to sort of link up as such. But there will be a European knowledge portal on this, but if you want more detail on the project itself, it's available on the EC sort of website, and certainly possibly in CEDA website as well. So final slide is all about the partners involved in this, such amongst the sort of the 5 operating bodies that we talked about, and more later on as such. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramesh. That was the introduction to the project, and I would please ask Jenne to give us a description of work package 1.
Thank you, Fabio, for introducing me. I'm Jenne van der Velde, working for Rijkswaterstaat. My name is on the presentation, but it's made by Arjen Heijda, who was not able to come to this conference, so I will do his presentation. It's about work package 1, framework and guideline for smart governance of infrastructure. And well, although it looks very easy, if you write it down, we had a lot of discussion, and also we tried to make it connected to the research, the scientific approach, but also to the day-to-day activities. And at the end, I will tell something about our living lab in Antwerp, in Flanders, where we had a nice meeting with all people involved in the asset management in Rijkswaterstaat and Antwerp, based on the living lab, which Ramesh just introduced. What was the task for asset management for infra? To make a framework. And in practical terms, the question to answer was, how can we optimize transport corridors on the basis of smart life cycle management and cross-asset, cross-border, and cross-modal optimization? If you have in mind that cross-assets in the most agencies is quite a challenge to fulfill, and it's, well, cross-border, then you have the language issue. Cross-modal, then you also have other technical elements, and what's not only cross-modal, it's also cross-management, asset management, other other infra managers. If you want to do that and you want to achieve that, it requires a mutual understanding of the infrastructure agencies, prompting the question: do we share a common language and structure we can use for interagency optimization? And if you want to do that, you want to see how that's working, we have to be aware how your own processes are going to work and what they are doing, so that you can learn from each other. And the task for the working package was to find the asset management elements and structure we all share, so that we can learn from each other. How did we do it? How did the working group did it? It was using all the information we collected the past years. We did a lot of activities on the working group on asset management for CEDAR and 2, which was based on which started this project. And at the end we had 5 agencies, but also the Wuppertal Institute, Unisearch and CERT and FURL to work with us to use all kinds of knowledge we had. We also used a lot of literature, and at the end we find a kind of method, model, and it's quite a complicated picture, but you can see we have 3 phases: the needs phase, the solution phase, and the delivery phase, and every phase has its own way of working, his own dynamic. For instance, for the needs phase, you will want to have a kind of service level which is agreed with, in our case, the minister. And you can say, well, what's important for the needs phase? It's the internal and external elements, but also what kind of service level do you want? What is your opinion? What's your vision about how to deal with resilience, sustainability, but also how to deal with the policy, with the regulations? For instance, how to deal with noise. If you know that, you also can identify the network shortcomings, and then you can say, well, in the need phase, what kind of decision-making process do you need? What kind of things should be solved, should be added to the network to fulfill the agreed service level, and also how to deal with that. Then you go to the next phase, and then you have some, well, elements which you can use. And in work package 2, they identified some good determine the risk-based tools, whole life cost calculation, but you have some elements where you can work on. You can respond within the existing network, so it means you have a little bit, well, some small activities. You can also say we need to improve the network. You can say we have the new infrastructure, and, well, also policy options to enhance the performance. And all those solutions, they also have a kind of different delivery phase. And when it's for the first 2, it's most of the time, if you're an agency or infrastructure manager, you can do it by yourself. But when it goes about new infrastructure, then you have the chance to make a good cross-modal integration. Of course, you can do it in the other 2 modes, but those are very important. And it's also good to be aware what does it mean for you. Of course, it also it requires detailed knowledge of the assets and a good governance and some processes to deal with it. For instance, when it's going when we look to the Netherlands, it's quite difficult. We're working with 3 networks, and for all 3 networks, we have different budget rules for maintaining and for renewal. So it means we have 6 different budgets to deal with. So it's a kind of a challenge in the own organization. And the organization is more complicated if you also want to share it with other modalities, other infra managers. Well, what did we do based on this model? And say, well, we can have a lot of reports, but we also can real practice, go on and try to see in practice what's happening. Therefore, we used the Living Lab. The Living Lab is a way of learning by doing. And in our case, we did it together with our colleagues from Flanders. It was also a little bit from a practical point of view. Then we all had the same language, although we thought we had the same language. But when you speak Dutch, the Belgian people are better in Dutch than the Dutch people are. So it's very complicated if you're talking to each other and you speak about the same elements. It's already something different, a different perspective, different way of reacting on it. We did it on the Living Lab in Eindhoven. It's located in the south of the Netherlands, and you see here the transport system from Antwerp, Eindhoven to Germany. It's one of the big 10T routings. But you also see a lot of other modalities, like the harbor of Antwerp, also a little bit Rotterdam, also an airport, Eindhoven, but also a lot of municipalities, Antwerp and Eindhoven, very big municipalities. They have their own way of looking to the infrastructure. And we did a lot of workshops together with each other. And during those workshops, based on, well, what does it mean for your decision-making process if you have to renew or to comprehend your networks, we concluded, especially for the E34, that for the cross-border alignments, the planning of renovation works is a very good one. It looks very normal, but when you look to the user, they were confronted with activities in Belgium and in the Netherlands, and they can be better planned, related to each other. Also, how to deal with future functionality when you are replacing your network. And a special one, and it's, well, it doesn't look like something about asset management, the truck parking facilities, but when you see you have to make some adjustments to your network, but who is responsible for it? And we find out that in the Netherlands we had another way of looking to this facilities than in Belgium. In the Netherlands we say, well, it's not our problem, and if we have to solve it, the minister has to say it to us. In Belgium we say, well, it's part of the problem of our road networks, and we have to solve it. So from a different perspective, you're looking to the same, and at the end, if we are not working it out properly, the municipalities, they have the problem, because if the trucks cannot park nearby the road, they go to the municipalities and have a lot of problems there. And we saw some other elements, so like opportunity maps issues, get cross-border acquainted, and also how to deal with the priorities, but also how to get the right people in the Living Lab. We saw that during the first session we had a lot of people who were very well in thinking about the network. And we said the next step should be people who are working on the network should be informed. But also we had some general conclusions. Cross-border issues are not isolated elements, not in time, not in type of work, and not in institutional players. So that means that you have to be aware who is inviting, who are you inviting, who can help you to solve the problem. Cross-border issues easily propagate deep into national networks. Just said something about the parking facilities. It looks very simple, but if you are not solving it right, someone else has the problem, and how to find the right guy or person who dealing with it. Also be aware of institutional asymmetry, who has the mandate, responsibility, work culture, but also in the name. In our organization, we don't call people, we call people director, but they are other kind of director than when you talk about the director in Flanders. So it's also be aware that it's not normal. And also the language is very important, as I mentioned before. And at the end, we had a good day with a lot of people. I think 50% of the people were from the Netherlands, 50 from Antwerp. And at the end, they say, well, this is a good step. We should do it another time, but also to make sure that it's more practical and not only theoretical. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Jan. Then I would please ask Ramesh to give us a presentation on Work Package 2. Very good.
So, hello once again. So the Work Package 2 was about life cycle management and risk as such. So within this sort of the task, we divided into sort of 3 principal tasks, but before I do that, it's important to understand why did we select whole life cost and risk-based models as such. But if I rephrase, it's about life cycle management and risk-based approach. I think too often with the emphasis of whole life costs or life cycle management, there is a need to ensure we intervene in terms of maintenance at the right time, right place, and at the right cost as such. That's the principle, but more often we may not be able to manage that because of the wider constraints we may have in operating the network. There could be funding issues and many other challenges. So that's the sort of the model we worked on. So we were required fundamentally to review the current practices for assessing network investment, major and minor improvements. How do we actually decide? How do we decide sort of the operating model for maintenance and operational needs, ensuring the network is maintained in a safe and a serviceable condition as such? So we reviewed sort of many aspects of the application of whole life cost with a series of questionnaires we sent out to principal operators. It was a bit of a difficult challenge, but we got good results coming back. And through that, we analyzed and we came to a conclusion there were fundamentally 6 building blocks which can be used for any asset or any other sort of transport mode as such. So these are the 6 building blocks. They sit well with the ISO 55001. But big question, what are the drivers for renewal within the sort of the building blocks? How is the whole life cost approach adopted in relation to calculation, assessing needs and intervention in future? And how do you actually decide that? Do we have certain equivalent models, whether it be deterministic or probabilistic models? But the irony is they're quite similar in the sense it's making best use of our sort of knowledge as to how assets deteriorate and how do we intervene and what tools do we have. But this is also all about, risk, ironically, as such. One of the appropriate governance and processes we adopt, so things in relation to the strategic objectives, do we have a framework for that? Do we have standards? And the answer is yes, we have standards we've adopted, some of them being empirical, some of them fairly precise scientific sort of approaches, but do we apply them in an appropriate manner as such? Detailed knowledge of the assets is so fundamental and very, very important. Without it, it could collapse, so we need to understand sort of how the sort of infrastructure functions, behaves, and so forth. And I think the other final block is all about ensuring we deliver the sort of strategic needs, which sort of works on a route basis as such. So these were the blocks we identified. Looking at that, going beyond that, our second part was to review sort of the case examples we received through questionnaires, meetings, in terms of how whole life costs and risk-based tools, risk-based assessment of the network is approached, whether it be tools or other means, how development of network at scheme level and program is sort of delivered, principally using whole life cost and risk-based, if any. Decision on major and minor improvements. So major means the whole environment of when you build new roads, you need to understand what the long-term implications are. So it's all about cradle-to-cradle approach. And in relation to sort of the structure for maintaining and operational needs as such, this could be associated with the types of contracts we have as well. The example, and we'll talk about the living below a little bit later, but the example being some roads may be privately financed, some roads may be publicly financed. The approach in how we intervene, how they intervene, may be different, and they do not align. So how do we engage and deliver something that's more compatible? So the review resulted from our own assessment saying, actually, our road operators or transport operators, whether it be rail or other infrastructure, they all have good systems, but we do have certain weaknesses to address as such. And without going into detail, this gives you an example of where we think there are certain things we need to improve. Asset management planning being one area where perhaps whole life cost is not thoroughly adopted. In relation to structures, there was a question earlier in the morning about risks and how we address a structure as opposed to other assets, say. And the risk-based approach is an important element to this, adopting the right decision as such. But that's the picture we got out of this. And the final task is actually, we're about to finish the actual outcome and the overview of the work we've done to date. And hopefully you'll see the results coming out in summer 2018. It's nearly there, so we've nearly sort of finished the journey. I just want to now move on to the Living Laboratory, London. So, as mentioned earlier, this was a joint session with CEDA Exec Board. We had something in the order of over 50 people attending over a 2-day session as such. But it was to verify and demonstrate the common framework around life cycle management and risk-based approach. But the theme, which I keep repeating, is important. Collaboration, communication, and lessons learned is something we need to work better. Earlier on, Easy College sort of mentioned about that we need to improve. So, with the message, asset management actually is found in many organizations, be positive, but we need a little bit of more joint effort in delivering something which meets our transport users, transport sort of infrastructure users as such. Okay, so where were we in terms of the Living Laboratory? A bit of explanation. This is the wider view of the southeast region of England. So our Living Laboratory was within the southwest quadrant of the sort of the M25 motorway, which actually sort of, we can call it a ring road, but it isn't a ring road politically, but it's something which actually serves and connects other sort of major transport road network and many other sort of infrastructure. So that's the region we concentrated with the key message. There are certain links which link England and Wales. We talk about the Seventh Crossing, which is at the other end of it, but it's important from an economic aspect in terms of effective operation of this area as such. I'll rather go on to the second slide. But if you look at this picture, this is the specific area. The M4 motorway was one area where we focused on, but certainly the M25 here, which is a huge kind of network. It's about 137 kilometer long network around London. So when we think of that, 200,000 vehicles traveling on M4 every day, 200,000 plus on the M25. Then we got the Transport for London network, which actually is within the vicinity of this as well, serving strategic sort of infrastructure. So we're talking of Heathrow Airport. So we have something in the order of 90 million passengers traveling to and from every year. So there's a huge demand. There's a huge demand in terms of use of this M4, as mentioned. The M25 connects the ports and harbours within the southeast region as such. So this was a good case for us in many ways. Also, I should mention, we have the rail network serving this area, certainly Heathrow. We have the new network being built. Heathrow in itself has got Heathrow expansion program, which will there'll be major works as such in relation to the third runway running across the M25 as a ramp. And we got high-speed network as well coming through. So lots and lots of things happening. And the smart mobility program is all about making best use of the network in managing capacity of, the capacity in general. So big demand. But I think there's been lack of sort of the connection between different operators, and we want this living laboratory started the dialogue in relation to this. I've discussed about the challenges we got, but certainly one of the things that stands out is regular maintenance of the aging infrastructure. Okay, so the workshop culminated into sort of a series of little discussions we had around table with our senior exec board members and innovative members from Transport for London. Network Red partially expressed interest, but they did give us an overview of what their needs are. But we set up with dialogue sheets, asking certain positive questions as well as negative questions, as how do we approach asset management. This actually will be presented in our sort of outcome report as such. But there was huge energy over the 2 days, and the sort of the will and desire to do better than what we do, and improve our communication. So our expectations continue with the London Living Laboratory as such, ensuring we engage and have regular sessions. But a little bit more in terms of the way forward with Nang, who's coming along to talk about this. Conclusion, simple, common language. This is also common language. And I think collaboration between organizations and departments within organization is important to deliver any kind of network in a safe and serviceable condition, but fundamentally meeting sort of the customer's needs and making best use of public funding. So, and I should say M25 is privately operated, so we've got different operators. So with that, that's really the essence of what we did. Package here.
Thank you, Ramesh. Now I would ask Elisabetta Marcovaldi of ANAS to present the work package 3. Elisabetta is responsible for AM4INFRA for these activities. Please.
Good morning, everyone. I am Elisabetta Marcovaldi. I'm working in the IT department of ANAS. As Ramesh said, a detailed knowledge of the asset status information is a key pillar for asset management processes. The goal of our work package 3 is to design a common core data set for sharing information between national road agents. We design an asset data dictionary that represents a common core data set for a common language. Then we try to design a model for put together this information extracted by singular national organization road authority database put together in the same language with a unique database for sharing some KPIs each together. And the last deliverable and our activity in this period is to try to apply this model on a real case in ANAS. In the first our task, we have designed an asset inventory data book that is represented by 9 principal and major data groups composed by data set and data item. We have designed a logical and physical infrastructure, put together our experience related to maintenance process, financial system processes, put together all relevant information for our organization. And then we draw a physical database. These databases represent the data model that have to be improved and filled by single information that are stored in the single database of each organization. Then we apply to this model a workflow for approved and publishing this information, like KPI related to viability or status of infrastructure, each together. This is a logical design that is represented here in a technical design. There are sources systems in each organization. There are ETL transform procedure to store the information in the central repository. And then there is a process for publishing this information. We try to create a standard, a common language related to information asset. The last work package is try to apply these models to our data. Now we are trying to extract all the information stored in our sources, put together in the asset data dictionary of work package 3, and verify and testing this model, our models. And now we are deliver a proof of concept related to A19. A19 is a ring road around Rome that is also has been the focus for our living lab. Is a ring road that connected all the part of city, is also linked to other motorways and to airport of Rome. There are a lot of stakeholders involved on A19, like Municipality of Rome or Autostrade per l'Italia. We have a meeting, we have a living lab on January to demonstrate, try to demonstrate and validate our model related to the data and to the system. So we have also collected some recommendation about our data dictionary and ontology map. So we have integrated our deliverable with this recommendation by the other stakeholders. Then we are planning another meeting related to the Living Lab to share again the progress of the project and put the basis for a future cooperation with our stakeholder on A19. This is in a nutshell our ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisabetta, and that completed the general presentation of the project. Now we are getting into what's going to happen in the next future. That is, which use we are going to propose to do of what we have done and how we are going to do it. And that's why I please ask Nang Ba from Highways of England to describe us the proposed approach with respect to the community of practice.
Oh, it's working. Okay, so my name is Nang Ba and I work for Highways England. So what I'll be talking to you about is a community of practice. So the panel, in essence, has spoken to you about what we've done, how we've achieved it, and also the Living Lab, how we've verified certain things and the dialogue. And I'll just go on to say, what else are we going to do? Because we don't want this project to just be a project that is done. We take the box and put it on the shelf, but we actually want it to continue post the end of the project in August 2018. Yes. So I'll go very quickly over this, and again, I'm repeating some of the things, so I'll be quite quick. So the Living Labs here was validating what we developed in AM4INFRA, so this framework that we have developed. And we had full validation in roads, partial validation in waterway and rail. Then the next step, so what's going to happen from April to August, from now to August, the end of the project. So we are, in our mind, we want to establish a community of practice, as I mentioned before. So this community of practice will be composed to start with of 10 to 20 experts within the area of asset management. And this community of practice will look at specific elements of asset management which we have covered within this project. These elements are related to our work packages, so line of sight, life cycle management and risk, and also data management. So what we are doing here is initially we will focus on national infrastructure agencies as first stage, and then we'll go on to the municipalities and provinces. So the community of practice will work, the meetings of this community of practice will be focused or will really run like a living lab. So as you've heard previously from my colleagues, the living labs, we started it and we said, yes, we're going to do a living lab. We tested it and it worked. So we got good feedback and a mix of feedback from everyone. And we realized that actually there's more work to be done for this. So the community of practice will actually embody the living lab. So we'll run the living labs in these regional settings in order to actually come to a solution. And the reason why we're doing this regional is because we want to focus our minds on a particular area, on a particular thing, so that people are able to understand and apply different elements of our framework. So this is a graphical representation of the community of practice. So just looking at really the three blocks or the three columns, so to speak, we'll have a community of practice lead. In our mind, ideally, this can be done through the CEDAW working group, which Fabio will explain later on, just so that we have a wider reach within Europe and also an established organization that could carry on what we have done so far in AM4INFRA. Then we have the community of practice, which is in essence us, the national infrastructure agencies that worked on the AM4INFRA project to lead and drive this. And then we have it split into smaller groups, and this is the regional aspect that I was mentioning, and focusing on just specific elements within asset management rather than the entire asset management as a whole. So our idea with this group is that these smaller community of practice groups that are regionally focused will grow, and we'll start looking at other elements of asset management framework. So the benefits of going back to having CEDAW is that we're able to have a means of which we could dissipate the lessons learned from the different communities of practice and actually spread it across Europe. So, as I said before, our objective is for this project to live beyond August 2018 and for us to actually leave a legacy and for this community of practice to continue. Our absolute dream, and I say this is a dream because it's very ambitious, is for the community of practice to be established in every country in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Nay. Thank you for the strength that you put into our common dream. That's very interesting, and we did not say it, but we started at the beginning of September 2016, and the 2-year project, so we are going to complete our activities by the end of this August. And that's why now that a few months are still remaining, that's why we are here to open our project to the international community, as well as to launch these future common activities. Now I will deal with the last part of our presentation. Next step and recommendations. And I will go back from the place where we started, and I will pass through with a view to the future. So the role of CEDAW in developing AM4INFRA, the legacy, and the replication activities. I think everybody is aware that CEDAW is the Conference of European Road Directors, which includes some 27 road agencies, and where we say agencies, it may mean departments of public administration, so part of the government. In some other countries can be agencies or bodies, or so different governance settings, but put together by the same goal of providing mobility service based on the building, enlargement, and operation of a road network. We started in 2012. We started even earlier with a project which is called a Backstrack. And so we asked ourselves which were our average level of services, which were our average cost components. And we understood that in order to have a full understanding of these aspects, you had to agree on some basic points. That is, what is an asset for you, how do you classify your assets, and so on. That's why we decided to launch in 2012 the Asset Management and Life Cycle Cost Working Group. We have been working with the nine agencies that were described in one earlier slides. And we published our report in 2017 on CEDAR website. At the same time, this was an activity carried out by some members, 9 members. It means that the agencies provide experts or employees of their agency, and they put together an activity and they publish a report, which initially is read and used internally within CEDAR, and then at a point in time is published on the website. But at the same time, in addition to this, let us say, fraction years activity, CEDAR has also been working on some research activities, launched a number of tenders financed by CEDAR members and awarded to private or public companies on a competitive basis. So the winners were research companies that provided specific studies or contributions. The issues are on the screen: asset management and maintenance in 2014, then relationship between asset management, asset information, and BIM, and then last year collaborative planning of infrastructure network on spatial development, and we started to work also with the issue of resilience of infrastructure networks. And then aging infrastructure, which is the core issue of any organization related with transport networks, because the problem is how to make the better use of existing infrastructures before thinking of enlarging, of investment, of new investments. This is a core issue anywhere. This is just to explain which was the background, not only in terms of activities, but also in terms of research. And also these reports are being published after some time, and the first 2 are available on the website. Starting from the CEDAR working group, 5 agencies, as has been explained, decided to propose this replicable common framework for whole life cycle and risk-based asset management. What does it mean, replicable common framework? First of all, a common framework. It means that it's the result of a number of comparisons and compromise which animated 5 major agencies in Europe, different for setting, as I said, for network, for financing, and for organization. But these agencies provide now within AM4INFRA a common approach. And this common approach is used and useful. Used in the sense that it has been created on the basis of existing practices, not theoretical practices. And usable in the sense that provides a number of information that are able, that are, I will say, useful by any comparable organization. Replicable means that although we all know that each organization has already its own asset management program, history, goals, and strategy, in all cases, we think that it's very important to give some tools which enable any agency to compare its efforts with not an ideal, but just a common framework. We're not providing the best practice. We are providing our best understanding of the issues that have been described, of the 6 building blocks, of the 3 phases which have been part of the ontological data information map that has been described by Elisabetta. What are we going to do at the end of the project? The first activity has been well described by Nang, that is the creation of the community of practice, which will help the dissemination of these results. And then the application of some of these tools created within AM4INFRA to National Infrastructure Agency, both belonging to CEDAR and coming from any need, Europe or also outside Europe. So in principle, any organization which deals with transport networks, in our view, can find useful to pass through this exercise. That can be done in two ways. The first one is just to advise on asset management, collaborative planning, and availability of transport infrastructure to the integrated level. There is the aspect of cross-asset and also the aspect of cross-mode. In principle, if you are managing a road infrastructure company or a rail infrastructure company, you are not strictly interested in cross-mode analysis. You focus on your activity, and unless you are forced by some external agent, you have your contract or program of performances, your obligations, but more and more often you are asked by some super positioned body, such as the government or the regional public political policy of the place where you operate. You may be asked to deal with other companies, to deal with other modes. So you need the way to do it, and you have to know which data you need to make these meetings or to find this compromise. And I will expand a little bit on that. And this is the first part. So it's just an operational tool. The second one is more traditional in the sense of knowledge exchange, and this is part of the community of practice, and that is the dissemination of information. And what is important is that if the dream that Nang was referring to will become reality, it means that the material that is being collected throughout this activity will enlarge the basis of knowledge and will supply more and more information, and ideally will be more and more useful to the international community. This is why in 2019 and 2020, AM4INFRA will be part of the action plan of CEDAR and will carry on its activities in a group called the Network Governance. And again, you remember governance was a key word that was used by Christina Marold at the beginning of her presentation. And if we think a little bit about it, asset, for instance, is just a matter of governance, in the sense that you have your company, you know that responsibilities and data and processes are allocated to different departments of the company, and there is a structure like in all companies. But at the end, the core of the problem is who has access to this data and to which different levels of decision are these data used. So at the end, if you think, for instance, of Highways of England, which among us is the agency together with Raxpidesat that is at the better stage of implementing a real asset management, not just the beginning of, but just real and working asset management system integrated with life cycle cost, you understand that in that organization, governance has been decided according to the goal of optimizing the use of data throughout all processes which involve the activity of the company. But if you think at the other level, you remember what the Commission said, and let's bear in mind that the Commission financed 100% of this project, is the idea of creating new governance between different players, between different companies which deal with transport infrastructure. For instance, our company ANAS at the beginning of this year emerged into the National Rail Company. This happened already years ago in Sweden, where they decided to put together all the infrastructure agency within the same governmental NewCo, let us call it in this way. So it seems clear that in many parts of Europe, now we start to think of infrastructure not in terms of physical terms, but you start from mobility needs and you look for the best choice. So again, governance in being concrete means if we want to put together different players belonging to different modes and different settings in terms of company, how can we compare their performance in real terms? How can I set ideally or possibly a common level or a predefined level of service, which can be some KPIs that I can decide to impose to different players, and then I have to control that these KPIs are respected. And if you think of that, we talk on behalf of a higher level organization. So just in order to provide some very clear information, in our view, AM4INFRA has two valuable aspects. It provides vertical tools in the sense that any organization is able to compare its approach with the one that we propose as a possible good one, not the best one, because there is no best asset management system anywhere in the world. So vertically, you can compare what you have done with what we think it's good in terms of steps and the structuring of the process. If we get to the horizontal tool, we understand that we provide the way to exchange data and exchange views by putting together on the same table different players. I will give you the example of the Living Lab of Rome. The Rome Ring Road that's been described by Elisabetta is a 70 kilometers long road. As you may understand, we know that all roads lead to Rome, so you think of the circle, the ring road, but you have a lot of radial roads, which, by the way, are the old Roman roads with all the Roman names, I mean, old 2,000 years ago. So we, as a part of our activity, we deal with interferences with province roads, municipality roads, and highways managed under toll. So we put together the same table representative from these 5 groups and companies, and we made 2 exercises. The first one has been described by Elisabetta. The proof of concept that our data dictionary and that our ontology map was correct. So we asked all these people, how do you deal with your data? What do you do with the data that you collect from the inspections? Which is the structure of your database? Who has access to this data and so on? And at the end of that part of the exercise, we understood that the approach that we propose in our project is acceptable. And we also had some suggestions, and we added up some parts. But the second, this was the vertical one, related to data, because the Living Labs, the London Living Lab was related to life cycle cost, and the Eindhoven was related to the line of sight. Each Living Lab was to prove the concept of the work package. But the second part of the Rome exercise was, let us imagine to have the same level of service for a corridor, for a trip, which includes sections managed by different road operators, toll motorway operators, national road such as ANAS, and smaller and smaller. So we have this 10, 15 kilometer trip, and we know that the level of service is different because the conditions of the infrastructure are different. So how can we put these people at the same table? Because it can turn out in a waste of time, because everybody has his or her approach, but we have to start from a common basis, and the common basis is the structure that's been proposed by AM4INFRA. And the second thing, the first one, horizontal vertical. The second core concept, in my view, is that we are trying to deliver what we can call the AM4INFRA protocol, in the sense that you may organize a Living Lab in different ways, and it's a costly activity, of course, because it takes time to organize, takes time to put people, and then people who belong to participate to meetings, it implies the use of financial resources. But you have to rationalize it, to make it the best way possible, and according to the goal that you may have, you may different way of doing. And now we are working just on that. if you want to have a cross-asset approach, what you have to do before putting these people on the table. And from this point of view, we have been working on the so-called maturity metrics, which has been developed in the literature. We have been used it as a core tool in the first CEDAR project, and for instance, Rijkswaterstaat uses it as the NSF. So we send these metrics to the partners that will participate to the laboratory, and then we ask them to make this self-assessment process, which is guided by an expert. And this is useful because, first of all, you understand where you are, and you are forced to think of checking if all aspects of an asset management system are in place. All parts means level service, risk analysis, data, knowledge, and exchange, and so on and so on and so on. And the second advantage that you get is that you have a ready comparison, and the people who are providing the same data as you are on the same table. So it's a very useful occasion. And we do believe in this tool, and that is what we intend to do. We'd like to thank you for the attention, and we are ready for any questions or critiques or integrations. And well, thank you. Please.
Good morning. So thank you all very much for your presentation. My name is Bart Luijten. I represent the Interlink project, as mentioned here. I have a question for you, Elizabeth. You're presenting an asset management data dictionary, and I'm wondering to what extent and how your data dictionary relates to international and national standards on data dictionaries, like AM4INFRA, GIS, or the Rijkswaterstaat object type library, or any national. And in the UK, you also have your national libraries. So how do you relate to those in your data dictionary?
Yes, we have designed a data dictionary related, so some present in our common experience and also in literature. This is a design of a physical data set that isn't related to a specific standard of software or products, because we are neutral related to the standard of the tools and products on the shelf of our industry or company or software. We have approached the design, collected the real data set database from Highways of England, from HANAS, from ROS. We have studied there some data dictionary, our, and also present in the common literature or present in the best practice of Canada data dictionary, government asset maintenance, and put it together. Then each organization could be choose the software or database product that they want. Our goal is called the same things, the same asset with the same name, and that asset has the same attributes in terms of data item for all of us. The ambition is not to represent all kind of information related to asset management system. This is an asset information management system. So we have chosen altogether with some trouble, internal troubles, because we have some
compromises.
We have to do some compromises because we are at a past of experience on our organization. And our deal is to standardize a common core dataset that it's not all information that each organization needs to management internal process, but are the common core dataset that make we able to share some information and to create some common KPI that are illustrated by Fabio first, to share some common KPI on an itinerary that would be managed by some different organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did not mention that in the CEDAR stand, if you want, there are 3 videos, short videos related to some visual results based on what we did. We had 2 or 3 meetings and we tried to organize them in a different way, more innovative way. There are some shots also about the living labs, if you're interested. Any other question from the floor? Yes, please.
My name is Maria Zarbide from Technalia. We are coordinating the Raptime project, which is also on asset management, as you know. This is not a question, but just a comment. We would very much appreciate your feedback if you could take part of one of our stakeholders reference group meetings, which are remote. We would very much appreciate your feedback as representatives of the stakeholders in order to align our approach.
Yeah,
I was looking at my colleagues if they wanted to say yes, but we all are good. Thank you. We know that we have some common areas, and that it's interesting to know the way each of us has been approaching them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything different, but the whole essence is all about common language, common references, and everything common. So I think this is an opportunity to certainly liaise and work together. And there's future aspirations, which Nang described as well. There's the doors in many ways are open for all of us to talk and develop that common language. Because I know the first question that asked, it's sort of breaking that barrier. But fundamentally, we're not trying to eat an elephant here, but we will manage that in a sort of way we all understand and change that culture, So yeah, I agree. So within sort of the remit of Ruth Smith, call us and we'll try and help as a team. Okay.
Anybody else? Anything you would like to know about this project, the future, the dream?
The lunch is not very good.
The lunch
is not very good. So
the immediate dream is the lunch. So we'd like to thank you. We have recorded this seminar. We are going to make it available if you want any sort of information. Again, the contacts were on the screen, but we are on the website. We'd like to thank you. If you want to provide some ex-post comments or feedback, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice day. Thank you.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Well done.
After all these years of precise.
Okay.
Okay, let's do it.